Joseph of Cupertino, he was a Catholic monk in the 1600s, and he did the impossible. He broke materialism. He levitated off of the ground while he was praying. Now, Joseph of Cupertino, a couple quick facts about him. He was labeled the village idiot, yet was able to have this intense prayer life, and he would elevate off of the ground. The church was super skeptical of him. So believe it or not, they had 2 inquisitions, not 1, but 2, trying to figure out whether or not this was an act of God, that God was really causing this, or is he a magician, or is he possessed, whatever it might be. And then finally, the Pope saw him elevate off the ground. The Pope saw him levitate. But let's get deeper into this topic of humility, that he was labeled the village idiot. People thought that he had a very limited intelligence, so they would mock him for it. He struggled in school. He attempted to become a monk, and he failed. But then he has a family member that tries to get him into another Franciscan community as a Franciscan monk. He ends up succeeding there. God takes care of him. He gets up to the point of becoming a priest. So he makes it through seminary education, all the vows. He becomes a priest. And when he is a priest, the impossible happens. On the feast of St. Francis of Assisi in 1630 AD, this man starts to pray, and the senses probably quieted for him. He starts to elevate off of the ground. His whole soul starts to become one with the Lord. He partakes of the divine nature. The world becomes quiet, and he senses the stillness of the Lord. And when he enters into that highly spiritual moment, ecstasy, he comes off of the ground. And it wasn't just this one moment. It happened over and over and over again. When this man, the stupid one, would pray, he'd come off of the ground. He would elevate. If you remember, Jesus himself did that. This is an imitation of Christ who ascended into heaven. But let's look at these eyewitnesses. There were eyewitnesses that were up and down the social hierarchy, hundreds of them. The nobility, the Saxon Duke Johann Friedrich, who was Protestant and then sees him, starts to fly, basically, and he converts to the Catholic Church. You've got clergy members who were known for their education, right? They're the educated ones. You've got military leaders like the Admiral of Castile. You've got peasants, you've got shepherds, you've got just thousands of people all around the world traveling to see Joseph. And us today, we might take a step back and think, did that really happen? Is that possible? Like, isn't he like a modern magician? Is he an illusionist? Well, think about this. 400 years ago, did they have super thin pulleys and strings or, ropes to pull someone up off of the ground outdoors and have them be able to move side to side? No. If they had anything that could pull someone off of the ground like that, it would be obvious to people, right? They didn't have the technology. This is 400 years ago. And then think about this. If you're skeptical, well, you're not alone. The church was. And there were 2 inquisitions, not 1 but 2. And his levitations prompted people all the way out in Naples, Italy. And they tried to put him on trial. They're trying to figure out whether or not this guy was truly a man of God. And in 1636, he has that inquisition, and they decide, okay, I think he is authentic. But then it stirs up again. It doesn't stop there. The church is actually very concerned about whether or not this is true. We don't just look at miraculous stories and say, yeah, it's got to be true. No, we use our reason. It's faith and reason. When this happened to Joseph the second time, he goes before the Pope himself in Rome. And when he kneels down to kiss the Pope's ring, he levitates in that moment. If you want to learn more about Joseph of Cupertino, there's so many different places you got to look. For example, Cameron Bertuzzi was a Protestant YouTuber, pretty popular. He actually made a whole YouTube video about this. The 13-volume official processi, which are in the Vatican archives looking over the whole beatification process for Joseph of Cupertino, whether or not he should be canonized as a saint. You've got a couple of 18th century, 1700 biographies written by Bernini and Pastrovici. You've got Carlos Eyre, who just wrote a book 2 years ago called They Flew, A History of the Impossible for Yale University Press. And you've got Michael Grosso's book, The Man Who Could Fly, all about Joseph of Cupertino. And that's the saint.